Welcome to the Mindful Healers Podcast with
Dr. Jessie Mahoney
and Dr. Ni-Cheng Liang.
We are here to help you learn to pause and be present, awaken your breath, and harness the ripple effects of mindfulness for radiant health.
We get you. We know you. We are you.
We have both been successful on the surface, yet struggling underneath. We have both had cluttered brains, been overwhelmed, and exhausted.
We're healers who have found solutions and want to share them with you.
Join us here to discover a better way.
Welcome to our episode on acceptance does not mean resignation. A reminder that our podcast is not medical advice. Our intention for today is to remind you that many people, including us, me and Jessie, struggle with acceptance.
We hope that you will discover that acceptance does not mean resignation, does not mean condoning, and it does not mean giving up. In fact, acceptance can be not giving up. It can be caring more, and it can be loving. Takeaways from today's episode, we hope, will be that acceptance is a path to liberation and peace, and that there are creative ways to work with the idea of acceptance to help it resonate with you, and that it's a gift to help you move forward in the face of challenges. So this episode came about, as usual, from a lived experience, and it has come up several times recently at in-person retreats, conversations about acceptance and acceptance as a component of mindfulness that helps us navigate some of our more challenging thought patterns. And many people truly struggling with the idea of accepting and struggling very much with this idea that acceptance means giving up or it means feeling resigned. And so we wanted to clarify at the outset that accepting things does not mean giving up. It does not mean condoning, does not mean being resigned. And yet it is one of the main invitations of mindfulness and is a key component of coaching and mindset. And so I like to think of acceptance as not resisting reality. And it's really simply that to me, that what is, and then we can decide. I always offer accept and one of the reasons that I think acceptance is so helpful is that it opens a door. It opens a door to connection. It opens a door to creativity. It opens a door really to peace, which is what so many people are looking for. And as Ni-Cheng mentioned in our introductory intention, I also struggle with acceptance, and almost everybody I know in the world struggles with acceptance. And so despite having yoga, mindfulness, and extensive coaching tools, most humans have a tendency to struggle with acceptance.
Speaking of acceptance, I'm accepting the fact that as I'm recording this podcast with you, there could be some jet fighter planes flying outside of my window. So if you happen to pick some of that audio up, I'm accepting the fact that I am recording in a life where there are other things outside of my control that are happening all around me. And I think this is a nice segue into talking about radical acceptance. So to radically accept is to wholly, like WHOLE, whole, recognize and to be with reality. And especially when that reality is painful or causes discomfort. And I want to put a plug in for Tara Brach's very powerful book, Radical Acceptance, and that she defines it as the willingness to experience ourselves and our life as it is. And for those of you who still struggle with the word acceptance, which is many of us, myself included, I like to add the words in this moment as a step towards embracing and embodying the concept of radical in radical acceptance.
And I will in full transparency, admit that I really struggle with radical acceptance. And those people that work with me know that I like to accept and so that allows me to accept and surrender to what is while still feeling empowered to have my own thoughts and opinions about it and perhaps wish it were different. And so I often find empowerment in accept and allow teenagers to be the way they are, or accept and not like maybe different decisions or diagnoses, and accept and be disappointed when other people aren't behaving the way I hope that they were. I can even accept and hate when terrible things are happening in the world. You can accept and be sad, for example. And so I like to add that because it feels much more grounding to me. It doesn't actually detract from radical acceptance, but it has allowed me to sort of embrace it and open myself up to bringing that concept in. And I do always have to remind myself that by accepting something, it doesn't mean that I am condoning it. It doesn't mean I'm resigned to nothing changing. In fact, when I accept and I'm actually much more able to tap into creativity to find a solution and to move forward in a healthier way. And so I like to think about it that way. I also often talk about this concept of peace begins with me. And I've sometimes taught in yoga the finger mantra where you do the thumb and index finger. So peace, thumb and middle finger begins, thumb and ring finger with, and thumb and pinky finger me. And that is something that we teach in kids yoga teacher training. I also teach it in adults yoga because I find it really helpful. And what I have found is that peace does come through acceptance. When we resist reality, we are not at peace. And so many people that I work with want to feel at peace. And I think acceptance is the segue. It links us, it's the conduit to peace. And so this mantra of peace begins with me helps me realize that accepting reality and accepting life as it is the way to peace. And again, it's not peace in saying that everything is fine and the whole world is okay just the way it is. It's just allowing that inner peace so that we can then move forward intentionally. I also wanted to add that at a recent retreat, this idea of not condoning or not being resigned and not giving up was not enough for at least one person to be okay with the word acceptance. And so sometimes the word choice is triggering for you, or just you can't use a word and it doesn't feel calm and okay. And so this person was able to, as we searched for other words, find peace in the word acknowledgement, so that they could acknowledge what was happening. They could acknowledge that this was the way it was, but somehow that felt much more comfortable than the word acceptance. And so I encourage all of you, if you need a slight different word choice, remembering that the word choice is very important and that we can personalize these strategies. So even if acceptance is the mantra used in, or the attitude used in traditional mindfulness, if it doesn't resonate with you, you can find a word that's similar that does resonate with you.
Yeah, so give yourself permission to also accept that there is perhaps a very deep resistance to the word accept. Mm-hmm. So give yourself permission to choose a different word. And I wanted to bring in some wisdom that I heard from physician coach Dr. Farial Michaud during a recent retreat about the word acceptance, that instead of using the word accept, you pick a different word, and you can use the inspiration of different languages to choose a different word. So for instance, in a different language, the word accept might have more of a connotation with regards to welcoming. And so in Mandarin Chinese, the phrase for accept includes the verb to catch. So what if we are choosing to instead catch reality as a verb? So that in my mind seems maybe even more receptive and even more open and more voluntary, because it's when we resist that reality that struggle and suffering occurs. And this acceptance has manifested many, many times already in my life and will come to do so many more times in the future as well, but very much so deeply in my cancer journey when I was first diagnosed. The uncertainty of the outcomes of the steps needed for treatment, the too numerous to count scares that I've already encountered and I will encounter, and also the ongoing screenings for the rest of my life. So I accept, but I don't necessarily like. So the accept and that has been so helpful for me that you've shared with me, that all of these different aspects of uncertainty are part of my reality and will be my reality for the rest of my life. It's a cost of cancer survivorship that I willingly accept. And then more recently, my 5-year-old is in kindergarten and also going to Sunday Chinese school, and that I accept that her journey with learning and how she learns is different than my eldest's, and also different than that of my expectations. And I can be with her reality in that she does not know yet how to read fluently, and that I can accept that as potentially a barrier to her learning phonetic pinging Chinese because she doesn't know how to read yet. And then with my teenager, the trials and tribulations of adolescence, already countless opportunities to practice acceptance as part of mindfulness for me and my own parenting journey. In my intentions for both of them has been to remain open, unconditionally loving, and supporting them. And so, in order to do that, I must be willing to accept their realities as they are in the moment. And doing so enables me to be present for them, which is an act of love.
I think that acceptance actually is what allows us to be present. When we're focused on changing something that is, we can't be present. And so many of us fall into that default patterning of fixing, managing, and controlling rather than accepting. And it doesn't mean that we don't want the world to be better, or we don't want to be helpful, or we don't want to even give advice or be a consultant, for example, but it keeps us out of that actively resisting reality. And I often talk about things being expensive, and resisting reality is very expensive. It's expensive emotionally, it's expensive energetically, and sometimes it's also expensive monetarily as we try to change things or do things. And so to me, this accepting of reality is just such a beautiful way to move forward. And as I think of my journey with acceptance, at least right now, you mentioned a few thoughts that just came to mind. I think that being a parent is a whole entire practice of accepting. We want our children to be certain ways, and yet they are all humans, individuals on their own course and on their own path. And when I teach the Parent with Presence course, I see this very often, that we have an idea of how it's supposed to be and how our children are supposed to be, and accepting that we have the children that we have and they are on the journey that they are on. Again, it doesn't mean that we don't help them and guide them and support them, but it begins with acceptance. And acceptance, in my mind, is really love, and it's connection. And when we're resisting that reality, we can't connect, and it's not loving and caring. And then thinking about spouses also, which you didn't mention, one of the most helpful things I think I've realized through all of this coaching and mindfulness work is we have to accept who our spouses are inherently. And so many of us wanted, we marry someone and we think they'll change this or that, anyway. And I think that when people accept that they're married to this person who is not perfect, that is where the connection and the love can come back. It also allows you to accept yourself as you are and not be perfect. And I think so many of us don't accept imperfections and don't accept ourselves as we are. And then as I've been delving into this caring for aging parents, or even connecting with aging parents, I think allowing them to be who they are. And as they age, they may be very different than who they were. And so realizing that we have to accept people in this moment, as you mentioned, the radical acceptance of in this moment, I can accept this. And accepting also, I've been struggling, as many of you know, my mom has been sick, and she has likely still had a stroke. And it's very clear that what's happened to her is going to not change. And so the acceptance of her limitations and different disabilities that will really be there for a lifetime. And I know that that's very hard for her to accept, but even as a child, it's very hard for me to accept that that's going to be her reality as well. And I think that we are not used to, as physicians, accepting. We are used to figuring out what can we do and how can we change it. And I don't think that accepting means that we don't have to think about that, but we can also, when we accept, we're much more creative in our ability to move forward. The other thing I just wanted to bring up is acceptance of the healthcare system as it is, I think is really important. So many of us, I was just at the American Conference for Physician Health, and we all want to make changes. We all want to make it better. And that begins with accepting that we are where we are and we're moving forward from this place and these things that have happened. When we're in victimhood and saying that all of these things shouldn't have happened and this is a result of X, Y, and Z, we're not really looking at the most creative solutions. And so accepting that our institutions are exactly the way that they are, that the current regulations are exactly the way that they are, it doesn't mean that we aren't going to come up with creative solutions. But if we don't accept, then we're often stuck in this victimhood. It shouldn't be the way it is. And that is not the most easeful path forward. And so acceptance always brings me back to this idea that it should be different, or I wish it were different. That's the acceptance part. And then I can still make a difference. And that's why, for me, acceptance is such a powerful tool.
So as always, we like to wrap up our episodes with some reflection questions for you, dear listener.
Where are you resisting reality? Where might acceptance be helpful in your current life as it is today?
How might accepting or being with or welcoming reality in this moment feel?
And what would it take for you to let go of thinking that acceptance is resignation or giving up? How might you have to change your thoughts just slightly to nudge yourself towards a different possibility?
Or do you simply prefer a different word? And what might that word be?
Thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope that you have found the podcast helpful and maybe a little bit perspective shifting. We would love to have you join us in the future for a retreat, and we would really love it if you would share the podcast far and wide with others who might find it helpful. I get so many emails from people who have just discovered it, didn't know it existed, and they're finding it really transformational. And we depend on all of you to share your experiences with those that you know to help it reach more people who might benefit. We are also about to get to 100,000 downloads, and we would love to get there faster because it's fun. And so we would very much appreciate if you would share it far and wide to help us get to 100,000 downloads. And I'm reminded here of not only 100,000 downloads, but 100,000 opportunities of people practicing mindfulness is pretty amazing in and of itself.
So help us do that by also leaving some stars and reviews. That helps others find us with greater ease. Please stay on after the sound of the singing bowl for our mindful moment offering.
As always, if you want to declutter your mind, be more present, and start truly living your one wild and precious life, come find us at the mindfulhealerspodcast.com.
Work with one of us.
Work with both of us.
Start or up-level your mindfulness practice.
Discover how mindful coaching can change your life.
Or even better, do both as part of our Mindful Healers programs and retreats. You can find links to find out more about our programs and join our communities at themindfulhealerspodcast.com.
Reach out and get started on your journey to a life better lived today.
The content of this podcast is not meant to be medical or life advice. If you choose to participate in our mindful moments, please do so safely.
Welcome to today's Mindful Moment, our weekly offering of a mindfulness practice to help you pause and be present, awaken your breath, and enjoy the magic of mindfulness. Take a moment at the outset to come into your body, pause, and breathe. Taking in a long, deep, nourishing breath through your nose and out through your mouth. Breathing in 2 more times, in through your nose and out through your mouth. And once again, in through your nose and out through your mouth. And as we connect with this idea of acceptance today, finding your grounding, finding the soles of your feet, or finding your sit bones on whatever you happen to be sitting on. And if it's safe for you to do so, bringing them to heart and close your eyes. If it's not, just listen and enjoy. And as you arrive here, hand on heart, eyes closed, going inward for a moment, notice any resistance to the idea of acceptance. Noticing any hesitancy, any fear of accepting. And taking a moment here as you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth to consider this idea of accept and. What if you could accept and not like? What if you could accept and hate? What if you could merely acknowledge? Accepting and allowing is one form of acceptance that I love. This concept of allowing life to be as it is. And allowing yourself here in this moment of peace and stillness to engage with the idea of allowing things to be as they are. No need to fix, manage, or control. No need to condone or give up or resign yourself. Just allowing. And as you sit with this idea of allowing, I wanted to share a passage from one of my favorite authors, Janet Archer. It's called The Gift of Allowing. When I got word that the first snow was coming, I was not pleased. I had just gotten home from North Carolina, having spent 2 weeks walking and riding my bike on the beach every day. I wanted flip-flop weather to last a bit longer, which of course is a ridiculous thought to hold on to if you live in the Northeast. I felt like a child having a temper tantrum, standing there in those flip-flops, watching the snow falling all around me. This is not what I want. But the snow did not listen. Down it came, and the flip-flops got relegated to the back of the closet. My life right now is here in the snow. A few days after grudgingly shoveling the driveway and complaining about the cold, a friend shared a photo with me. It was the Buddha sitting in the snow. The Buddha was neither complaining or whining or grudgingly wishing he could still wear his flip-flops. As I stared at this photo, the word that arose in my mind and my heart was allowing. The Buddha was allowing the snow to land on him, gently and lovingly, receiving what was offered. What a beautiful gift this first snowfall, soft white fluff falling from the sky. The photo asked me to change my opinion. to allow what was instead of wishing it were different. And from that place of allowing, a deep sense of calm arose, a calm that reminded me that all was well in my world. The flip-flops were where they were supposed to be when you live in New England. The snow was where it was supposed to be when you live in New Hampshire. And I was exactly where I was supposed to be, right where I am. Allowing all to be exactly as it is a beautiful thing. The Buddha, holding space for it all, reminded me that nothing has gone wrong. We always have a choice about whether we receive what is being offered. Right now, I am choosing to receive allowing as I watch the world sparkle every time a sunbeam caresses that freshly fallen snow. Coming back to your breath and noticing how you feel, noticing the ease that comes with the sense of allowing what is, whether it be snow or institutional policies or children or teenagers behaving as they do. Notice what calm comes when you stop resisting what is, resisting reality. It doesn't mean you like it. It doesn't mean you condone it. It doesn't mean you are resigned or giving up. It merely means you are accepting the reality of things as they are. Allow yourself to not like the snow falling in October. Allow yourself to wish that you could put on your flip-flops once again. And then go back to accepting and enjoying and making the most of what is. Telling stories that serve you, that feel good, and receiving what is being offered in this moment. Looking for the gift in what is being offered. Looking for the learning, looking for the growth, looking for the evolution. Taking in a big, deep breath of acceptance. And a huge exhale of resistance. Sending yourself compassion and kindness for the human tendency to resist and to not accept, and the challenges of accepting. And wishing yourself well on a journey ahead of accepting and, more often, letting go of resisting reality and instead receiving what is offered and moving forward with grace, compassion, and intention. May you all have a beautiful week of letting go of resistance, accepting what is, and choosing your and. Namaste.